So you may have a 20% deposit of the purchase price, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a 20% deposit.
My parents didn't talk to me about it. And I can see with both my sister and myself, like this has caused issues.
If they say, oh, you need a 5% deposit on a median house price, say for $1 million, you only need 50 grand. That story might not be as popular as you need to save for 40 plus years to get a deposit of 20% on a $2 million house.
Welcome back to Property Now, guys. This is the podcast inspired by Australia's favourite topic, which is property, and hopefully inspiring some property conversations all around Australia, especially with the younger generation's first home buyers. I'm your host, Michael Carboni. My friends call me Carbs. Once again, Chris Ferris, CEO, founder, co-posit. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Can I call you Carbs?
Mate, we are friends. I feel like we're friends.
Hey, Carbs.
You know what I mean?
Great to be back, as always. Thank you.
Always
for
good to be
me.
back. And we've got the black and the white shirt, if
Yeah, we
anyone
do,
watching,
yeah.
which is fantastic. Just the
Oh,
yin
wow,
to the
yes.
yang, even though we probably sound and look similar, a lot of people are saying. Jason, the sexiest voice in property podcasting.
Great to be back.
Good to be back. I could just you could sing all night.
Can you've never sung on the pod?
Oh, man, I can't sing, man. Tone deaf.
Can't sing.
No, I don't believe
Yeah, I disagree, man.
You're the bass.
Yeah.
You're the bass to the choir.
What is it? Soprano. What are they? The
bass.
You do know the bass? Oh, bass. All right, it
Yeah.
is bass. Chris, well done.
Oh,
Savannah
God.
Lawbear, welcome back as well. Back
Thank you.
Is this week 3, week 4?
I don't know. I'm losing count already.
We've had some
It's been a
interesting.
blast.
We get a lot of feedback on YouTube. We've had some interesting feedback. There was one guy in particular who wants to start a drinking game. Whenever you say
Yes.
he's going to drink.
I'm too focal.
I think we should turn up. The
So we've
Rs.
actually brought a
Yeah.
bottle of vodka.
Yeah.
And we're gonna
yeah, turn it up. It's 10 a.m. guys. Anyone watching
Yes.
while we're recording?
Yes,
But,
yes. Yeah,
I-
it was interesting.
I
Thanks
encourage
for
the comments
feedback.
and thanks to everyone
Yes.
that came to your defense. But look,
That's right.
first
yeah.
time on a pod. There's gonna
Yeah,
be a
that's
few
right.
ums
I'm
and
learning.
ahs. And hope that guy gets really drunk for this episode. Plenty to talk about today. The topic is actually going to be how do you actually buy a property? It's a question that we get every now and then, which sometimes it's astounding to me. It's like, there are things that people don't know. And to us, we take it for granted because we're in the space, we work in it every day. So we might go through that. But first, a lot of success last week, Prop Talk, where we look to TikTok for some property discussions or property bros. It can be like someone we want to absolutely slam for their comments. It can be something good that we want to sort of highlight. But we've got another Prop Talk this week, so I thought we'd watch it together
Let's do it.
and
Alright.
live react. Prop Talk for this week. Let me know if you want to pause, guys. Let's go.
Tonight, we have concerning new data. Analysis shows this year's high school leavers won't be able to afford a house until they're almost 40 years old.
A beautiful part of the world
Did you want to say something, Jay?
No. I'm good.
to be able to call home.
The Australian dream
Often racing here at 1.5 the bid,
bounding further and further out of reach.
selling at 2,120,000.
I love that, like just from media in general. The Australian dream rounding further out of reach, like just big headline.
I love the fact
We
that
are.
I love the fact that like the Australian dream used to be like an idea that you could achieve, but now it's like genuinely becoming a dream.
Now
where
it's-
you wake up,
yeah.
it's
I
like, oh yeah,
a
40 years
nightmare.
old.
Good line,
It's
yeah.
like, wow.
It used
quite
to be
tried.
achievable. Now it's bounding further out of reach. Let's go.
So congratulations to my boy.
Quickly becoming a nightmare for those not yet in the race.
The market's definitely picked up a lot since the new year. We've really seen properties increase in value, and it's just about getting into the market and not worrying about getting a good deal.
Now,
Great advice from a real estate agent. Just get in. Don't worry about the good deals.
Nah.
As well. This is Queensland as well. So Southeast Queensland in particular, it is actually has been skyrocketing in recent times.
teenagers are being urged to start planning ahead. New data shows those graduating high school this year will have to save for around 21 years to afford a deposit on a home in Brisbane.
That means that realistically, home ownership is becoming more and more of a pipe dream.
Melbourne teenagers are also facing a 21-year wait, slightly less time in Adelaide at 17 years, while in Sydney it will take 18-year-olds now 46 years to save enough money to break into the market.
Even if
I mean, that's retirement age.
Yeah, like you're 18, you can retire and buy a house
And buy
at
a
the
house
same
at the
time.
same
even if you start saving from when you're a baby.
Yeah. Your
46.
parents should start saving for you when they're
So you
Teenagers.
retire
the-
and then you can't get the loan because there's no income because you're retired.
Yes.
Or you pay it off till you're
Start
95.
saving, guys. 46 years.
If young people are able to save up enough money for the deposit, the data shows mortgage repayments would still take up a large chunk of their income.
The average mortgage repayment on a typical house in 21 years' time is going to be about 63% of the median wage.
Many young people forced to
We've got a lot to unpack.
Okay.
There's a lot to
the
unpack.
bank of mum and dad for help.
But not everyone is fortunate enough. And for those people, I would just say start saving early, learn how to budget, and just try to keep to that budget as closely as you can.
Next side's
Start
9
saving
News.
before you're born. Let's go.
Yes.
9 News.
All right, guys. Lots to unpack there. 9 News. Dreams, nightmares, pipe dreams.
No
Where do we
dreams.
start? Lots to unpack.
Like based on that, yeah, it's dreams. But we need to look at some of these stats. Like 21 years, 46 years. Are they talking about a deposit? Are they talking about a 5%, 10%?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be
Surely.
a 20% deposit.
They didn't say that in that clip, right? But when they're talking about saving for the deposit, it's saving for a 20% deposit. Yeah. So 46 years to save 20% of what? $1 million is 200K or whatever. Like, let's Chris, you're smoking, you're
20,
smiling.
20%. Like the days of 20% deposits. Like the reason is obviously for LMI. I get it. But like, are people still saving for 20%? Jace, you probably see this. Are people still actually thinking it's 20%? Because I think this is, and not advice, but this has got to be a common myth in the market that you need 20%.
Oh yeah, look,
before you can buy
100%.
property.
Yeah, it does my head in when people, because they get stuff like this from the media, or articles on the internet. It only ever talks about a 20% deposit.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, watching this, all I can think about is sensationalized.
Yeah.
You don't know, like you asked, 20% of what? 20% of $2 million
Yeah.
is 400 grand. Is that a first home? Like even by today's standard, or say back in the days, no one is buying their first home at $2 million.
Yeah.
Right. So like I think these stories just continue and perpetuate, that nightmare of buying a property, or the Australian dream is
You're
now
right.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
the first home buyer is not buying a median house.
correct. And
You'd hope so,
probably not
yeah.
even a house.
Yeah.
There are other property types available
Yeah.
other than a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tents, cars,
Yeah.
100%.
caravan. No, like seriously, but
Units,
apartments,
apartments,
townhouses.
townhouses,
Yes.
villas. What happened to them?
Yeah. Yes.
Because they're not always $2 million, right? But whenever you see stats, it's always median house
Well, like,
price.
what are they
Yeah.
achieving with that? Like 46 years. Like, what are you even achieving?
It's
So
scaremongering.
you're telling someone you're 18 years, you need 46 years to save
What's
for a
the
deposit
point
if you're in
of
Sydney.
trying then?
That's
like
right.
sticking to
I'm
your
trying to understand
budget
what's
for
the media
46
trying to
years.
achieve with that.
Yeah, well, it's
Selling
It's
stories.
selling
It's-
stories.
Selling
that's
stories.
right.
Because if
Right.
you're an 18-year-old, 46 years,
Yeah.
you're going to start saving now, or you're going to
But,
not
but
worry about it.
he's saying like stick to a budget
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
you're gonna do that for 46 years, just not live your life for
Yeah.
46, and that's just
Yeah. So I think when they do stories like this, you'll have, say, the fastest growing podcast in Australia doing a review and things like that, right? But
We're
that's the
gonna
whole
debunk
idea. That's the whole idea, is
Yeah.
that people talk about it,
Well, that
is
people
a-
watch
I'm
it.
glad you
Yes.
mentioned that, because that is a fact. We are Australia's fastest growing property podcast.
Oh, is that right?
on
I was
YouTube.
just using an
According-
example.
Yeah, according to like the 5 or 6 other property podcasts that I've been following, we are the fastest growing on YouTube, but not on Spotify and Apple. So anyone listening, share it with your
Go
friends.
check.
Make sure you subscribe. But so 20%. Why? Can we just jump back? And yeah, great prop talk, because there's so much to unpack here. 20%. Why is 20% the number that they always aim for in these stories? Can one of you
Yeah.
guys, share?
I mean, I know you love the lending stuff, but my thoughts, it's just for LMI. So
Yep.
lender's mortgage insurance.
Yep.
If you don't have 20% of the property's value,
Yep.
so if you're getting a loan of 80% or more, or sorry, 81% is it, or more, you need to pay a lender's mortgage insurance.
Yep.
So this is where that 20% deposit has been picked up from, that
Yep.
you need a 20% deposit to avoid LMI and extra costs.
Yep.
Right. But I think there's a lot of evidence out there based off where property has gone in the last 10, 20, 30 years to suggest having that LMI cost added to your loan or whatnot is more beneficial in the long run, because you're able to get into property faster
Yeah.
than having to save for that full 20%
Yeah.
deposit.
aren't there a lot of like schemes out there where you don't have to pay
Exactly.
LMI? Like it doesn't
Exactly.
apply
For
to
first
first home
home buyers.
buyers.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really out of date, right? Because LMI, I did some research on this, and I didn't actually know, but LMI was introduced in the 1960s.
Really?
I think 1965. So I
Wow.
think
Oh, wow.
prior to 1965, the banks probably had a policy that said you can only buy a property or borrow money if you have a 20% deposit.
Yep.
And that's the case. So I think that's where it's been passed down. It's 20%, 20%. And I think parents teaching their kids or people advising others, uncles and aunties advising their nephews and nieces saying you need a 20% deposit because you don't want to pay LMI. It's kind of like LMI premium added to the loan. It's like dead money, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be renting, you should be buying. So I think that just keeps going. And now stories get picked up, focused on 20%. But look, it might be intentional because if they say, oh, you need a 5% deposit, on a median house price, say for $1 million, you only need 50 grand. That story might not be as popular as you need to save for 40 plus years to get a deposit of 20% on a $2 million house.
The thing is, it might be factually correct, but it's incorrect on so many levels.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
not the full story.
It's not the full story. You just don't need that full 20% to buy a property.
Man, this is like generalization galore,
Yeah,
right?
like-
Because we're doing loans for first home buyers every day.
Yeah.
Right? Not many people actually have a 20% deposit,
Yeah.
but they're getting into property. They're buying their first home. They're using the government first home guarantee with a 5% deposit, 10% deposit, 15% deposit, not paying any LMI. They're using guarantors from their parents. They're medical professionals, accountants with certain qualifications, nurses can borrow 90% without mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
So like there's so many options available.
But like if it was
you
going
don't
to
need
take you an extra, say, 5 years or 6 years to save for another 10% to get you to 20%,
Correct.
that 5 or 6 years of property growth, you're better off paying the LMI. Or
Well,
getting it added
exactly.
to you because then you can get into the property market faster.
Especially if you're renting,
Correct.
because if it takes you that time to save up just to avoid that, say, 10, 20K of LMI that gets added onto your loan, you continue to pay rent at $600, $700 a week.
Why
Right.
is there LMI? Like, do you know why it was introduced?
Well, just to reduce the barriers to entry. It's actually there to help first home buyers. So LMI was introduced by the government.
Yeah, but it's to nullify risk for the.
But it's
for
an
the-
insurance.
Correct.
It's an
Yeah,
insurance.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I always tell my customers that LMI is not a punishment. Right? LMI is an opportunity. You don't have to take LMI. You can choose to save 20% deposit if you want to. But if you take LMI, because LMI exists, you can buy property with a 5 to 10%
Yeah.
deposit.
But Sav, to answer that as well, so the bank or the lender would feel that if you have less than 20% in savings, then you're riskier in completing your mortgage, right? Or that's how they felt.
They're
since obviously-
required to
Yeah.
insure
Yeah,
it,
they-
right? So
yeah,
if they
need
have
to
less than a
insure- yeah.
20% deposit, they're
Yeah.
required to insure.
So you need to ensure what's missing, like between, say, if you put down 10%, you need to insure the other 10%, and it's the buyer that pays for that insurance, not
That's
the bank
right.
or the
So
Okay.
lender.
who
it's
is
the buyer
insured
that
is the
pays
bank.
for the bank's
Yeah,
insurance.
so
Oh,
that's
right.
another thing. That's
Oh,
another thing.
right.
No, the main thing is because they're lending you money at a higher
Yep.
risk
Yeah.
that they're comfortable with compared to 80%.
But you're also
Um,
paying a higher rate, right? Do you pay
So
a higher rate?
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Some banks you pay a higher rate,
Yeah.
some banks you actually don't. Right. So that's why as mortgage brokers, not
Yeah.
a plug for myself, but
Yeah.
all mortgage brokers, the point of it is to look at, okay, if a customer's needing to take LMI,
Yeah.
which bank is more suitable? And that's one of the things we look at. Does this bank charge the customer a premium on the rate because it's a riskier loan?
Yeah.
There's LMI, or it doesn't. Some don't. Some do.
What I hate about it, again, I mentioned that it might be factually correct, and there's a lot of generalizations made, but is the damage being done? Like
Yeah.
someone that's sitting down, an 18-year-old might be sitting down with mum and dad, looking at this, saying, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to buy a property." Like, is the damage being done?
I'll totally agree because
100%.
that'll stop
Yes.
somebody
Yeah.
from reaching out, having a conversation, say with a mortgage broker, and exploring the options. They could be eligible for a 5% deposit. Their parents could be guarantors, right? They could be in a profession that allows them to not have to pay LMI and only need a 10% deposit.
Can I segue this?
Yeah.
Because what I'm getting at is you got a 16-year-old, right? That might be in that starting to work.
Yep.
They're starting to save.
49 months could be starting.
49 months,
Yep.
right? They're starting to work. They're starting to save. They might be thinking, okay, what am I going to? They're starting to think, what can I do with these funds? I
Yep.
can invest. I can do different things. They might be looking at property again. They're sitting down, 18, 19-year-old with mum and dad, sitting down watching maths, and then this comes on in the middle of it. Then you get situations where people have no clue about how to buy property.
Yep.
Which I think we're going to look at someone.
Yep.
So how does that influence that circle of people that have no idea how to buy a property, what they're looking for in property, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, that very first step is going to take me 46 years. Oh, well, then this is not for me.
Done. Yeah. I'm
out.
gonna rent.
So
I'm gonna whatever.
The damage is done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we call you the segue. Because it's actually the perfect segue to the actual topic for today.
Yeah.
So how the actual beep or how the actual I'm gonna say it, how the actual fuck you can beat me out later, Peach. Do I buy a property anyway? And like I said, we take it for granted. Like you write mortgages every day, your team does. I don't know what you actually do, Jason.
He does TikToks.
You do TikToks while your team's there writing mortgages.
Think of new hairstyles for the next day.
Man, I saw that one coming.
Yeah, that was good. but we work in property, ex-developer. We work composite, working with customer, working in marketing. We get it, right? So we know how property works. And there's actually another video we're going to show which has spawned the idea for this episode, because we've kind of realized that there might be a 16, 17-year-old sitting at home with mum and dad watching this going, okay, property is not even on my radar. So let's a bit more editing page perhaps here, but let's try and find the next video.
I'm in the market to buy a house.
Right.
But here's the fun fact about buying a house. How the fuck do you do it?
Dude, don't ask me.
So I've talked to 4 people, how do I buy a house, right? Because I went, I was like, who gets the money? Like, do I buy the house and then get a loan? And does the real estate agent give me the money to buy? What the hell do I do?
Sorry, I'm going to stop there. Everyone knows what a real estate agent does. Like, this is surely like...
Man,
is this like the and
You
I
seem
can't
genuine,
have
Dale.
assumed knowledge these days. I don't think
Like,
there's
and
such
this guy's
things.
pretty. I see his other TikToks. Like, I've never listened to this pod. It's actually from the You Wouldn't podcast. I've seen this guy's TikToks. He's very funny. So I don't know if he's just exaggerating. If he's like playing.
Oh, there's definitely some of
Like,
that.
there's got to
Absolutely.
be a
Some
bit of
part of
playing dumb. Like, that's part of the humor.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not saying he's silly, but I mean, everyone knows what a real estate agent does, surely. But anyway, let's continue.
People are bringing up mortgage brokers. Do you know what a mortgage broker is? What is a mortgage broker?
I'm pretty sure. I
Sorry, Jace. They do TikToks and change their hairstyle.
think a mortgage broker is the person who loans you the money.
What?
I think.
I thought it
need
was
a-
someone that looks for the house and finds it and sees if you can get it or not.
Right.
That's what I thought it was.
No, that's a real estate agent, dude.
Like that, this guy knows. The other guy knows, and he's just like, "Oh, I don't want to tell you, you're silly, mate." Like, he actually knows, and he's having to play dumb too.
Well, they look for the house, right? They're the
No, I
ones
thought the
selling it.
real estate agent looks for buyers.
Does your dad know? Like what?
Yeah, Dad seems to just be fine with it. He's kind of laughing.
So, but is he not helping?
No, he's not helping.
What? He's like figure it out
He's
on
like,
your
good
own.
luck. Yeah, which is kind of ridiculous.
Kind of
Yeah.
like grow up, kid.
Well, he was just like, okay, we'll have fun. Like, I'm not fucking helping you at all, mate. Like, you get rid. So I'll call him and he'll be like, how's Molly Mook, you dickhead, or something like that. So I'm just like, fucking hell. So I'm on my own here.
Yeah, shout out to
Wow.
that guy's
I
dad.
don't know if there is any assumed knowledge out there.
Yeah,
but
well,
you could,
obviously not.
No.
But see, that's like when people see that first news headline or the first news story,
Yeah.
and then there's people out there that have no idea like what a real estate agent is and what a mortgage broker is. What damage are those? Is that news story or that headline
And that-
doing out there?
But that's the thing too. Your kids are sitting next to you, and they say, "Dad, I'm not going to be able to buy a house for 40 years," and you say, "No, well, actually, let me talk to you about it." And you probably already have talked to them about it.
Not his dad.
This guy's dad,
Yeah.
he's like, "Good luck, dickhead." Like, okay.
Imagine saying
So,
that to your job.
I mean, yeah. So look, it spawns
wow.
a whole heap of questions. So let's not assume knowledge. And there's, apologies to the listeners who probably there's some experts that listen, and please drop your comments in YouTube. Help us out as well, and all the socials. But let's just start. Like, let's talk about the full process of buying a house. Like, what do you do first? Who do you talk to? Like, there's a couple of comments here. Do I buy the home then get the loan? Does the real estate agent give me the money to buy the house? So let's unpack.
Good real estate agent.
Yeah.
Mate, what mate?
That's
Mate, I don't know I know a lot of real estate agents. Anyway, sorry. Process. Where do we start?
Let's get into it. I mean, I've sort of broken it into 3 stages.
Yep.
Before buying, so before even starting to look, during and when buying, and then after settlement. So after
that's pretty
buying
good.
and after settlement. So there's those 3 sort of stages.
Can't argue with that timeline.
And look, most most people are in that first stage, right? Like the podcast host, whatever they're in that first stage before buying. So and I know there's a stack of activities or tasks that you need to do before you start buying. probably a lot starts with the mortgage broker, Jace. But one of the first points that I've got is find out your borrowing capacity. Like, don't start doing anything until you find out your full borrowing capacity, how much deposit you need, understand all your upfront costs, government costs, legal fees, stamp duty, what the implications of LMI or no LMI are, see what government schemes are available to you. Is that a good place to start, Jace?
Yeah, look, 100%. And I'll summarize all of that into just go and speak to a mortgage broker. Look,
Or your local banker.
or a lender in the bank.
Yeah.
Because you've got someone who's going to educate you, explain everything to you, right? So that you don't have to go and necessarily do research on the internet, read blogs, leave your email address to sign up to newsletters.
So I still think there's an important step before that. And I think you need to educate yourself. You don't need to know the ins and outs of everything. That's what the experts are for. But you should understand, like, this is why I'm buying the property. This is why I want to buy property.
So, like, your goal?
There's probably a step before that, which is your goal. Because, like, a 14, 9-month-old, when I was 14, 9 months, I knew I knew I'd buy a house eventually, but I was doing the job at Macca's at 14, 9 months because I was probably wanted to buy a car. Like, there's always, like, a few things you want to do.
A few steps in between.
There's steps.
Yep.
But at some stage you go, okay, house is part of my goals, part of my plans. I have an interest in it, et cetera, et cetera. I've had conversations with my dad, my friends, my whatever. And then you make that decision to buy. Then you start doing the things that you said. Okay, let's start thinking about research. Let's reach out to a mortgage broker. Let's go to the bank. Let's discuss. Let's define some terms. What's a mortgage broker, Jace? Did you take offense by that? Like, what is a mortgage broker?
Man, I was like, does that bro even buy property?
What's a mortgage broker?
Look, a mortgage broker is someone that's in between you and the bank that's going to provide you the loan. So the mortgage broker does not lend you the money, right?
Really?
Let's go back a step.
I've got to stop asking you for
Let's
cash.
go back a step, Jace. What's a mortgage?
Right. A mortgage is when when the bank takes security over a property and lends you the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So that's a mortgage. So in the process, when you actually sign your loan contract, you actually have to sign this document called a mortgage, right? And that's the legal document that gives the bank the right to have a mortgage over your property. Right?
Yeah.
So that's where the word mortgage.
So basically,
comes
they give you money.
Correct.
And they say you're going to sign this document, which we call a mortgage.
Yeah.
And that's going to be registered somewhere out on title
Correct.
to say you owe Commonwealth Bank X amount of dollars. So if you ever sell this property or if you ever want to
pay it back.
refinance, you owe CBA X amount. For
Correct.
example, as a
Correct.
mortgage holder.
That's
So do
right.
you own the property or does the bank own the
you
property?
own it.
Yeah, okay. So that's a little
own
thing.
it.
You always see
Or
that people go,
if you don't pay, do you still own it?
You technically still own it unless they take possession. If you miss out on mortgage payments, there's a period where, like, it could be 90 day, like a hardship.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
right.
process.
Okay.
so the owner's still you.
All right.
Yeah. So that's why the mortgage is the bank.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
We're
that's a
way
mortgage.
far down the line. We still haven't
Yeah.
purchased it. We're
still
setting
haven't
goals.
purchased it, yeah. So that's what a mortgage is. What's a broker? No, I'm just kidding. But so you don't, do you have to go to a broker? I'm not going to ask you because I know what you're going to say. Do you have to go to a broker? Can you go to a bank?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You can go to a mortgage broker or a bank.
Yeah.
So let's
Or
talk
both.
why you choose a mortgage broker
Great.
or a bank. So if you go, and I'm going to continue with CBA, we love CBA. If we go down to CBA, the local branch, they'll be able to, so you'll speak to the local business banker, or not business banker, or the local mortgage broker. No, it's not a mortgage.
Lender.
God, Jesus. Cut all of that out. You go down and speak to your local lender.
Yep.
And they'll talk to you about your options. They'll educate you, absolutely. But they'll give you CBA products.
Yep.
Now, for mortgages. Now, there's obviously hundreds of other products out there that other banks offer. Westpac, NAB, all the other banks.
Yep.
If you go to a mortgage broker,
Yep.
they'll be able to give you different deals from different banks,
Yep.
which might be better or worse for your circumstance. Well,
Yep.
they probably shouldn't recommend something that's
Yep.
worse, but they'll be able to tailor the right solution. So I think a lot of people go to mortgage brokers, and I think it's about 75% of loans, roughly 72, are written by mortgage brokers to the banks.
Yep.
And that's because they can give a wide selection
Yep.
of which banks are doing what. Because there might be certain areas where that mortgage broker knows that this bank is the best for this particular client in this particular location.
Yep.
So there's I wouldn't say there's any massive positive or negatives to go either way. I think the first step is setting the goals and getting the advice. But if you want that different selection of different banks, go to a mortgage broker.
For a broker, think about like Aussie John, you know, Aussie Home Loans, they sort of, and Mark Boris, those sort of guys, they really started the trend, I think, Chase. Am I right in saying that they were the first big brokers to really stick it to the banks and then make mortgage broking a thing that now 73%
Yeah, that's right.
of home
Like
buyers are using
at
mortgage
scale,
broker?
yeah.
At scale, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask, do you get a better deal generally if you're already with that bank? Like if you're banking, if you've got your savings account with that bank, would you get a better deal if you also do your mortgage with that bank?
Oh, no, not necessarily at all. Yeah. So sometimes, so the bank will look at, it depends on the bank, right? So the bank will look at how much you're borrowing, the type of customer you are, right? What's the LVR? So, for example, the percentage you're borrowing against the value of the property. So, whether you're borrowing 50% only, are you someone who's borrowing 95%, right? And they've got these different metrics that they work, and it changes. If, for example, are you buying as an owner-occupier, as an investor? Because some banks might attract a lot of investors, and that might be an issue, is that they want to attract more owner-occupiers now. So they will balance.
So there could be
their
different
loan
interest
book.
rates for
100%.
investors
It
versus
changes all the
first-time
time. So
buyers.
there's
Yeah.
no one rule of thumb.
Okay, well, that's good.
But in
Good to
general,
know.
it's the
Yeah.
loan amount,
Yep.
right, the type of client you are, and the percentage of borrowing, because that's a risk versus reward situation, right? So the lower percentage you borrow, lower the risk. The bank is more motivated to give you a better rate.
Yep.
And so will they also give us an understanding? So when you speak with that mortgage broker or local banker, will they be able to give us or give someone an understanding of the LMI implications and the government schemes as well that are available to, particularly for first-time buyers and the government schemes?
Yeah, so it really depends. So the LMI, definitely. But the LMI, again, like you mentioned, if you go to the bank, so LMI varies in cost as well. So just because you go to CBA and the LMI is X dollars doesn't mean that's the same cost of LMI at NAB.
Right.
Doesn't mean that's the same cost of LMI at ING.
Yep.
Right? So there's differences in LMI, just like there's differences in interest rates and fees. But if you're talking about things like first homeowners grant and stuff like that, that's the added value and service that that particular lender or that particular broker chooses to provide to the customer. Because it's not really in the mortgage broker or the lender's kind of responsibility to educate you on that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
the information's all available online.
Yeah.
It's a program provided by the government. But I think a lot of people in the industry as mortgage brokers or lenders, they will educate, explain as a value add to differentiate themselves, to guide you through the process and not just say, go to the New South Wales website and read about it.
Yeah, I love it. So we're talking about how the fuck do you actually buy a property. We're in the first stage, the pre-buying stage.
Yep.
We're doing our research. We're understanding that it's part of our goals.
Set your goals.
We're speaking to a broker or a bank manager or someone like that. We're getting advice from friends and family too. Is there anything else we should be doing at the pre-stage?
Well, I think one thing I really want to point out with the banker and the broker. So if you go with a mortgage broker or a banker,
Yep.
you don't pay them.
Yes,
So there's no cost to go to the mortgage broker or to go to the local banker.
Yep.
The mortgage broker gets paid by the bank.
Yep.
So something really important when you go and speak with a mortgage broker. 99% of the time, you're not paying the mortgage broker.
And to answer
correct.
that guy's question, the broker doesn't give you the money.
No.
The real estate agent certainly doesn't give you the money. The bank, the lender gives you the money.
Correct.
So one of the next steps that I would look at once you've got a bit of an idea, there's really two steps that you do concurrently. So you can shortlist some suburbs and locations that could suit your budget, and then start looking at how much deposit that you need and preparing a budget. So start figuring out how long it's going to take to actually get to that deposit target that I need. If you need a deposit, they may have given you advice that, if your mum and dad have equity in their property, you can look at Bank of Mum and Dad. And we've done a whole episode on Bank of Mum and Dad, so go check that out.
Yep.
But so that's potentially one advice. So shortlisting some suburbs that might suit your budget and your deposit that you need, and start budgeting for the deposit.
Yep. Again, one of the other another expert you can speak to. So this is all stuff you can do on your own, and I recommend you do the research on your own. But once you sort of have a good vibe or a good feel for what you want to do, you could speak to a buyer's agent, especially if you're investing interstate, for example, or not. Like a lot of people, their first home is a suburb near where they grew up. Because they're comfortable with it, they can drive past it. But we speak a lot about first home buyers buying or rent vesting, right? We spoke about it last week. So if I live in Sydney and I need to buy my budget's $600K and I need to buy in Perth to do that, I can't fly to Perth every weekend for open homes. I'd probably speak to a buyer's agent, which a buyer's agent, again, to define our terms, is the reverse of a real estate agent. So the real estate agent is working
So they take your money.
They take your money.
This is a big point. Say this. You need to say this.
The real estate agent works for the person selling the property.
Yes.
The buyer's agent works for you. So I love when real estate agents and buyers agents start negotiating because you see some real fire there.
But this is such an important point because a lot of the time, like you go to an open home and you've got a really friendly agent there, you know, trying to sort of get you in there and trying to really smooth talk you.
Like this one here.
Yeah, like
the prop talk before. She's like, "What? Like, just get in. Don't
Just get
even
in,
look
like-
at it." Like,
the thing that people need to understand is that agent, they don't work for you, right? They get paid by the vendor or the seller of that property. And it's in their interest to get the highest price for the seller and, to be honest, for their own brand. It makes sense for them to get the highest price, which means you've got to pay that high price.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind when you are negotiating, when you're going to open homes, which is one of the other steps. But when you're going to open homes, and there's definitely some tactics when looking at inspections and whatnot.
That's another
about the
episode.
information
We
that
should do an
you-
episode about that.
Well, it's there. It's when buying. So
Yeah,
the inspection side of things, like. You know, don't give away too much. Don't talk about your budget with the agents that are on the ground. Like, just don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
Try and they're going to try and ask you questions.
And
they're all qualifying
the
questions.
agents are clever,
They're trying
man. They
to
ask you
see how
questions.
serious you are as a buyer.
You don't realize that everything they ask you.
Every
means
question they're
something
asking
to
you
them,
is they're
know?
trying to just get some bit of information.
Also, don't be the guy that doesn't speak to agents as well. Give them something. Be friendly.
No, be
Yeah.
like, that's completely fine.
You know.
Yeah.
But so
Be that guy.
buyers
Less
agents,
is more, mate.
Buyers agents, they can help you look if they know what area you're looking at. If they're an expert in that area, that's great. They know what properties typically in an area might be coming on. They might be able to get things off market for you.
Do they
which
negotiate for you
They
as well?
can negotiate for you. They can bid at an auction for you.
That's
So you
great.
See, you go to an
know.
auction, you see the guy in the back on the phone going, "Yep, okay,
That's
yep,
real.
that's
They're
Okay.
becoming more and more popular, I
Yeah.
believe, because
Yeah.
it's so hard at the moment to buy property.
yeah,
And
buyers
I think
ag-
it's a bit of a minefield.
Buyers
So it's-
agents are the next mortgage broker because mortgage brokers, like, 20, 30 years ago didn't really exist. Now it's 72, 73% of
Yeah.
buyers use them.
100%.
Buyers agents are sort of heading in
But
that
you
direction.
pay for the buyer's agent.
You pay for the buyer's
Yes.
But
agent.
it will be worth it in terms of.
A lot of people, and again, look, there's good and bad buyers agents. There's spruikers out there. There's, you know what I mean. But a lot
do
of
your
people,
research.
a lot of people I speak to that use good buyers agents, if it's the right area and the right specialist, they normally say, the 10 grand I paid was worth it.
So we're still in the before buying phase. So you talk to a buyer's agent.
So much happening.
Deposit and budget. So this
No
is
wonder
really
it's confusing.
this is a really important part of the deposit. So whether you need a 5, 10 or 20% deposit, if you need a 5% deposit, the time taken to save for that is obviously going to be shorter than to try and save for a 20% deposit. So consider that in your budget. But if you're borrowing 95%, so you've only got a 5% deposit, it means that your mortgage repayments are going to be higher. You're probably paying LMI in most circumstances. So there's those factors that you need to consider.
We should say that too. There's a reason if you have 20%,
Yeah, of course.
great, right? But we're just saying there's ways to get in without the 20%. So yeah,
I mean, if you're below 40, you probably don't have the 20%. So we're talking to that community.
Under 80.
Yeah, like
if you're below 64 in Sydney, anyway, yeah.
like it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Are we still in the pre-stage?
We're still there's one more thing I think.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by Coposit, where 10K means you can buy a brand new property. That's right. It sounds too good to be true, but it's not. Check it out, coposit.com.au.
Once you've sort of got your deposit ready, I would think, and you're ready to start the search, you get pre-approved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Before you're
what does that mean?
Yeah.
So talk on that. So our mortgage pre-approval.
Yeah, look, pre-approval, there's two types of pre-approvals out there, right? So people think there's only one, but typically there's a fully assessed pre-approval. So what that means is that the mortgage broker helps you prepare the actual loan application. So that's like what Chris is talking about. You've worked out all your scenarios, your budget, the deposit. So this is the one scenario, right? So there's the hypothetical, right? Collect all your documents, you sign the paperwork, submit the application to the bank. The bank does a credit check. And then you'll have someone at the bank, a credit assessor, with a computer, right, looking at the
One
information
computer.
on this, right, and verifying, for example, to make sure that the mortgage broker's done the calculations correctly. For example, you've got HEX, it's showing up in your pay slip, making sure that the broker actually declared you got HEX and not mistakenly didn't tick HEX and gave you a higher loan amount, right? So this is how you get it verified. So it's to get comfort, right, and peace of mind is that the mortgage broker said I can borrow X dollars. It's now been confirmed by the bank. Someone at the bank who's reviewed everything has said, that is correct.
Yeah.
I'm now ready to go. So you've got all the hard work done. The only thing left is just you finding the property, getting a valuation, so forth, right?
You got your budget.
Yeah.
You've got your short list of suburbs that you can buy into.
Yeah.
So those, like from personal experience, I wouldn't do I wouldn't be buying a property, to be very clear. If they ask the question, do you just buy and then get the loan?
Yeah.
Do not buy,
Without
in my
knowing.
opinion.
Without knowing.
I wouldn't buy if I didn't know my goal. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I could borrow, and I didn't have my deposit ready.
Yeah.
And I don't have my pre-approval. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be buying without those things in place.
So if I look at realestate.com at the moment, or domain.com, or
Window shopping.
or coposit.com at the moment, I probably set from highest to lowest, and I dream a little bit, and I go, yeah, 10 million bucks.
Okay.
I'm gonna go in the water. That's fantastic. But if I get if I'm being serious, I get my pre-approval.
Yep.
I understand that I can borrow $1 million, say. So all of a sudden, I'm serious, and I'm changing my search terms so that I'm looking for properties within my price range. That's when I'm looking at suburbs, and I can go, hey, okay, this suburb, it's probably a bit too expensive for what I need or what I want, so I'm gonna have to go a few suburbs over, and that's that part of the search. Very important as well. What you can get approved for, that's not necessarily your full budget, because that doesn't include what you've saved, right?
That's right.
So if I've got 20% there and I'm pre-approved for $1 million, I can actually spend 1.2. I wouldn't go all the way, but like I can. It means I've got a bit more.
Correct.
Right?
So your purchase budget and your buying capacity are two very
things.
different things. But I find that because of the terminology and everybody uses different stuff, often gets confused. So people will sometimes think, yeah, my buying capacity is 700 grand. But what they really mean is that my purchase budget is 700 grand. Like I'm not borrowing 700 grand to buy property for 700 grand because the bank's not going to lend you 100% of the value of the property, right? They will always lend you 80, 90, 95.
And just on that as well, so you may have a 20% deposit of the purchase price.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a 20% deposit.
Yes.
And what I mean by that
Yes.
is there could be other costs, such as if you're using a buyer's agent, that's now an additional cost.
Yep.
Could be, I don't know exactly the rates that they charge, could be a fixed fee. But there's also stamp duty. That's in
Correct.
there that you need to if you're not a first home buyer, generally there's stamp duty.
The broker tells you about this?
They should be telling you.
Oh,
So the
absolutely.
people that you need at this phase, I know there's a solicitor that you need on your side down the track. We're not there yet. The people you need on your side right now is if you want to use a buyer's agent, but definitely the mortgage broker or the local banker. These are the groups that you need right now when you're starting that search.
Yep.
And then probably a really good Excel spreadsheet to help you budget.
Yeah.
Or there's some great
Excel
apps out there
spreadsheet.
to help you budget.
Amazing.
But yeah, so is the stamp duty and there's other government costs as well that need to be factored into what you need to purchase.
So all of this factored into your total purchase price. You
Yep.
know your budget. You know what your deposit is. You've got everything. How the fuck do you actually buy a house? You start with a goal. You do some research. You get the right experts involved. Are we done with the pre-stage? Are we ready to go into the search
you're done,
stage?
you're ready in the search stage. So,
So
you
what-
shortlisted some suburbs. You
Yep.
know roughly where you can afford.
Yep.
And you're ready to start your search.
So what search stage look like in this process? How the fuck do you actually search for a house?
How do you search for a house?
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of platforms out there. And I think this is where if you do make networks with other agents out there, so they're not enemies, to be clear,
Yep.
but you make networks and you get to know when new properties come on.
Yep.
And there's varying ways how you can buy a property. So, if it's private sale, so this is just a house or an apartment that's come up for sale.
Yep.
And it's called private treaty, where you can just go to the open home and buy that property. It could be over a series, a couple of weeks. Or there's another method, which is via auction, which
I hate
first-time
auctions.
buyers probably don't like,
Yeah.
because it's a bit of a pressure cooker environment in
I-
the actual auction.
I get nervous even if I'm not bidding at an auction.
That's the whole idea.
It's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
why are we
Yeah.
doing? Why am I
Correct.
here?
It's
But I
such
love
a
it.
pressure
It
cooker.
is.
These are for existing properties,
Yes.
right? Like,
And then
how
there's
about
off
off
the
the plan? Yeah, okay.
And then there's off the plan.
Yeah.
So that's, you're buying effectively off a set of plans and what's going to be built in a location in the next 2, 3, 4 years' time.
Yep.
So there's those
And
different
that's
ways.
from the real estate agent.
Yep. You're speaking with the real estate agents that are probably working for the developer to sell the properties. So that's for new builds. But then the existing side of things, there's auctions, and then there's what's called private treaty.
Okay, so who do we meet here? Which experts? We meet the real estate agent. We've already touched on. What's a real estate agent for people hosting?
Real
the
estate
You
agent is that one in that
podcast?
flashy car in that
Yeah.
three-piece suit
Yes.
that's coming out.
Yep.
And nah,
Yeah,
real estate. Look, they're
yeah.
they're the ones at the property. They're appointed by the seller of the property or the vendor of the property to bring people through,
Yeah.
to have open homes, to issue contracts, to give more information about the property. And they're a very valid source of information. I would be asking the agent a lot of questions
Yes.
as opposed to them asking you questions. Really ask them the questions. Why is the seller looking to sell? It's
Yeah.
always a question I love
Yeah.
to ask.
And they never tell you the truth.
Maybe not, but it's always a good question to ask,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
agree.
why are they selling?
So
How long have they owned it for? Are there any issues that you know of? Like, ask these questions. They legally have to disclose this stuff.
the agent, not always necessary. You can sell via private treaty. I don't really see that too often. Like I'd say 99.9% of properties are sold via a real estate agent. They normally have the database. They work with, they've got their packages on real estate, domain, et cetera, et cetera. And they're the ones that are bringing people through open homes on Tuesdays and Saturdays, organising the auction with the auctioneer.
But when you say bring people through, you mean just opening the door, right?
They get there, they come out early, they put the little signs out, this way.
Yep.
And then they open the door.
Yeah.
And then they take your details when you walk in, so they can call you on Monday. And then they walk around and ask you the questions.
Yeah.
But look, there's a lot out there. Again, and there's good agents, there's bad agents. I think the big point is their job is to sell you the property for as much as possible. So that's why you probably got to be a bit careful. But I always think, like, if I'm going through an open home, I want the agent to know. I don't want them to know too much about my situation, but I do want them to know that I'm serious about buying.
That you're interested in serious.
Yeah, because if I'm popping up at all these open homes and I'm like, I don't want to tell you anything, and like, oh no, I'm not making an offer, and they're calling me every Monday, all of a sudden maybe they're gonna start looking at you differently. They're not gonna feed you the right information as well. It goes both ways.
You need to have a relationship with the parties. So you need to get enough information to create a relationship. So then if it's going to go to auction, it can sell before the auction as well.
Yeah.
So if you're really keen on a property and you're just waiting for it to go to auction, and then it could all of a sudden just sell before the auction because you weren't keeping in contact with that agent.
That's right.
Trying to keep up to date, and hey, if there's any offers being made or if it's going to sell before auction, let me know. I'm keen to put an offer in. That as well is something that you can.
I'm always honest too, like, hey, this is the kind of property I am interested in, but there's a couple of things that it's not actually for me. But if something like this comes up, like, let me know. I always try and like have 2 or 3 agents. If I'm when I say always, I've bought. I'm not wheeling and
on a
dealing
daily
every
basis.
week, But like, I want to know, hey, and sometimes they're like, hey, something's coming up in a couple of weeks. Let's get you for maybe you can get an early walkthrough. Maybe
particularly if you're looking for an area that's like really tightly held.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's like 1 or 2 that come up every 3 months. Like that's where you want to, and that's where you want to live. That's where it's important to have the relationships with those agents within those areas that you want to buy into.
Maybe we should do an episode. I'd love to get like maybe an ex-agent come on and tell us the secrets, like what the agents ask, how you should answer. I reckon that would be a mad episode. But it's got to be an ex-agent that's prepared to like shit on
Spill
agents.
the beans.
Spill the
And now
beans.
has left the industry.
Yeah, and maybe we mask their voice.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they can wear it
Oh my goodness.
just in case.
It's just dark.
Yeah, they'll be seen in the dark.
Dangerous.
Yeah. So I think that would be pretty cool. So real estate agents, like, don't be afraid. They're not working for you, but there's got to be a bit of give and take, I think.
So we're still during the buying phase.
Yep.
So when you're doing your inspections, if you're serious on a property, there's a few things, particularly if it's an existing property, there's a few things that you need to do, such as part of your inspections is the building and pest, and you need to start reviewing the contract. So if you're serious, you need to now engage a solicitor or a conveyancer to review your contract.
Have you put down some sort of money at this stage?
I hope not.
Okay, so you do the inspection, like
Do your inspections first.
Right,
You need someone to look at the contract first to give you the advice, because it could be something like it's in a flood zone or it's in a bushfire zone.
You do pay for the building and pest.
Yeah, you pay for the building.
Yeah,
and
no,
pest.
but I mean, you don't pay a holding deposit.
And I wish there was a better way to do this, because like sometimes if you look at 10 properties, you're paying for 10 building and pests. I wish there was an easier way.
Look,
for
some
this to work.
experienced buyers, property buyers, they'll just go out there sight unseen. They don't care. But if we're talking like to the first home buyers looking to get in, this is really where I'm talking from.
And if you're an owner occupier, you want to live there. You want to make sure that the ceiling's not going to collapse.
Like it could be termite infested, and you
that would be good. Yeah.
termite
Right.
infested.
And on your point about, like a better way to do this, so now there is actually a better way to do it.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. So what you're finding is that, I think there's a company called Before You Bid or something like that.
Yeah, mad.
So that, if you're looking at a property and you haven't put down a holding deposit, right, but you want to do a building and pest before you decide to put some small deposit down, you can pay a small fee. Like they share the cost of the
that's
building
great.
report.
That's
so
a good idea.
if 10 people do it and it's $500, you'll pay $50 each.
That's scary too, because if 10 other people are interested in the property
Yeah,
and you go to
correct,
auction,
correct.
oh my
Or you
god.
can gauge then.
Correct.
That's
So
good.
if you eventually
Yeah.
buy the property, then you pay the full cost of the report.
Yeah.
Right.
So that means you don't have to go pay $500 on this property,
Oh,
$500
that's good.
on that property.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's
Okay.
it's pretty good, and
That's a
that
good
came out
thing to
because there
know.
was a gap
Yeah.
in the market of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What I'm also seeing now is the agent representing the seller, they're actually telling the vendor or the seller to say, hey, go get a building and pest report
Correct.
and disclose it as part of the process. So instead of everyone going to get their own building and pest, the owner may have already done that. So then it's
great.
It's in the owner's interest as well, because if
Yeah.
people are going to do that, they don't need to spend that money upfront, and it's part of the service. So
That's
it's
right.
actually
And
a
it's
really good
quicker
idea.
probably as well.
Yeah.
Like, you can sell quicker.
Look, if you're a seller and you want obviously to sell the property, if someone's delaying that process because they need to get a building and pest, if you can just provide it to them, it's much. You
Sometimes
can
it's-
speed up that process.
Sometimes the sale is subject to building and pest.
Yeah.
That mustn't happen as much anymore with these sorts of things in
Yeah.
place.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So and then reviewing the contract. So this is why you asked, should we have purchased yet? And I hope majority of first home buyers and even owner occupiers, so non-professional property investors, right, have looked at the contract or at least getting advice about the contract and what's in there. And that costs a bit of money too that you need to pay for. But it's highly important that you look at the contract before signing anything.
Yeah. And you would have a solicitor or a conveyancer. A conveyancer is like a solicitor like their expertise is property contracts. So you want them looking at these contracts, and they'll find the little things like, oh, hey, we should change.
There's like a couple of scenarios where you might put down like a holding deposit,
Yeah.
which is like a 0.25 sometimes,
Yeah.
where you secure it and then it's subject to getting the
Is
contract
this
reviewed.
for existing?
For existing.
Alright.
So it's called the cooling off period,
Yep.
which is only available in private treaty and in off the plan. But you can also waive your rights to cooling off and off the plan.
Yeah.
Right. So there's
Which you
no
would at an auction.
security at all
You
when
would
you're
at auction,
going through
yeah.
this process. Like someone else might sign the contract quicker and
Correct?
then
Yeah, they can.
and then you miss out.
Yeah, you miss out.
In off the plan, you see it a lot because like you actually want unit 17, and you want to make sure they don't sell unit 17 while you're looking at the contract.
So you put like a holding
Yeah.
deposit
Put
down.
a holding
Yeah.
deposit, an EOI.
But you can't do that in existing.
You
properties.
can, but it's so you can do it if the vendor is prepared to do it. But if a vendor's got a property that's like it's in demand, a lot of time they won't entertain the cooling off
Yeah.
Right.
because it's can be a 14-day period. Or in New South Wales anyway, it's a 14-day period
Your
where that
buyer's
property is
not sold.
effectively sold, but you haven't paid that full 10%
So
deposit yet.
on like a realestate.com, for example, sometimes you see
Under
contract,
offer or under contract.
offer, under contract. What does that mean?
So that's where it's probably under
Yeah.
cooling off.
Yeah.
So that cooling off is only available in off the plan sometimes. Again, a lot of the time you waive that right, so you don't have the cooling off, and then in private treaty. So ones that aren't going to auction. Importantly, in auction, if you're putting your paddle up to bid, there's no cooling off. You're committing to buy on that day, and if you're the successful bidder at an auction, you must pay your deposit on the day.
Yeah.
As soon as you purchase.
You've got to. That's where the pre-approval then comes in. Like you
Correct,
can't
yeah.
really do that
That's
unless
right.
you've got
That's right.
pre-approval.
And that's where if you're going to buy an auction,
Yeah.
you must get a fully assessed pre-approval, not like a computer generator one where they just do a credit check, right? That nobody reviews the actual documents. So a lot of banks have started doing that because they know that when they do a pre-approval, the conversion rate is low.
Yeah.
Because someone gets a pre-approval here, they take 6 months to find a property. They don't eventually come back to that same bank.
Yeah.
Right. So the banks don't want to invest all that effort and resources of an actual person reviewing everything, issuing with a pre-approval. So what they're doing now is just doing a credit check and taking your information as you've declared it, saying that it's subject to us verifying it.
Yeah.
So people misunderstand that. They think, oh, I've got a pre-approval in 15 minutes. This is amazing. I'm ready to go and buy an auction with no
Right.
cooling
But
off and
it's
pay a 10%
dangerous
deposit.
though,
No.
isn't
Super
it?
100%.
dangerous.
100%.
Especially if you're not.
Yeah, because
educated.
it's all in the fine print. You know, you're conditionally approved,
Based
subject
on-
to 17 lines of stuff.
This is why it's important to follow some of these steps. And a good buyer's agent does help. It does cost money, but a good buyer's agent helps with this process because, I mean, the last thing you want to be doing is what you're saying, Sav, going to auction, putting a 5 or 10% deposit down, and then not being able to settle. So during that settlement period,
'Cause you
not
lose your
being able to
deposit
settle,
then.
you lose your deposit.
The only way you would buy without a pre-approval is if you don't need a loan and you have 100% of the cash to buy the house, which will take
Which is no one.
someone graduating from high school today will take them 734 years in Sydney to save 100%.
It's
of the-
achievable. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know
Okay.
about that. Yeah. So okay, great. So pre-approval.
And then in private treaty as well, so making an offer. I think if you're going to make an offer,
Yep.
contact the agent verbally,
Yep.
make the offer, but then follow it up with an email. So put the offer in writing. It's really important that you put the offer in writing to the agent so they can then, because they're legally obliged to take or required by law to take that offer to the vendor.
But do you send that, or does your solicitor conveyancer
No,
send that email?
you can send it, or your buyer's agent if you've got one.
Yeah.
I would say in that scenario, it's you or the buyer's agent if you've
Okay.
got one appointed. If you don't have one appointed, you would send that offer. Just send an email. Hi, my name's X, looking to purchase this particular property for X amount. Please advise.
All right. So
So
you've
the
now
offer.
made an offer.
You may have made an offer.
Unless you've gone to auction, which is a different story.
Auction's different.
Then
You make an offer every 10
Auctioneer is the guy. The auctioneer, just to define terms, that's the guy that drives a better car than the real estate agent and has a 4-piece suit, instead of a 3-piece suit. But that's a totally different story, right?
Yeah.
The auctioneer comes in, does the auction for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Walks away.
Right.
I just
Sounds
want
like a good job.
Yeah. Oh, you could do 16 auctions in a day, make $500 an auction. Happy days.
And then yell at people
Right.
on TikTok after.
I do want to define the people because again, back
No,
to
it's super
back to
important.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
podcast. How the actual fuck do you buy a property? You know, who are the people involved? Like,
There's quite a few people involved.
a lot of people. A lot of people.
So you're buying.
So you're
now
buying now.
You're at the point. So you've put the offer in. Let's go private treaty.
Yep.
You've put the offer in. You're ready to buy. They accept your offer.
Yep.
You would then get your solicitor to confirm that you're ready to sign contracts.
Yep.
And you would sign contracts. It's that simple.
Yeah. Do they bring the
Wow.
contract to you and you actually sign it?
I
Do
think
you go
these, a
into
lot
the
of da-
office?
like it's
Is it
probably
online?
DocuSign. A lot,
Electronic,
Yeah,
a lot
correct.
of times these
correct.
days. Yeah,
Yeah,
You'd
we've
hope
seen
so.
it on DocuSign.
It's like 300 pages or
Yeah.
something like that.
Prior to
Like,
DocuSign, you'd have to go to the real estate agent's office or go to your conveyancer's office, physically
I
actually
don't know,
sign
there must be
it.
something exciting about that, though, doing
Yeah,
that
there
in
is.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take a photo of the sold
Yes.
sticker in front of it. You put it up on Instagram. That's an also
Yeah, it's like
important
getting
part of the
married.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a big process, right?
Right. You do celebrate, right? It's a
Yeah.
happy day, right?
It's
Yeah.
the biggest purchase anyone, like most people, would make,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In their lifetime.
And then
So-
the monthly repayments are coming out, not as happy.
Yeah.
But that day when you actually.
Yes.
But there's a
actually
period. So
sign.
after you buy, then there's this period, the settlement period.
Yep.
Before you actually settle. So what does settle mean? So if you buy today, generally, if you're buying on an auction, or so forget off the plan. If you're buying at an auction or private treaty, there's usually like a 42-day settlement period. So that's the period where you need to get your formal loan approved.
Yeah,
Jace, you wanna
correct,
talk on
correct.
that?
And that's where the bank does a valuation on the property as well to make sure that they have to accept the property. So there's always an element of risk, even if you're pre-approved. Yeah. So for example, even if you're pre-approved, because the bank doesn't know which particular property you're going to buy. It's only a hypothetical scenario that you're going to buy a property in this suburb, for example. The suburb can change, the postcode can change. So when you're pre-approved, before you get your formal unconditional loan approval, it's subject to valuation of the property.
What
Right,
if it
and
comes in lower?
Yeah,
Like
so
you've signed a contract.
That's why it's really important to spend a lot of time in the beginning of the process that Chris mentioned to work out the scenarios, right? Because you can't assume that the valuation will be exactly as the purchase price. Most of the time that is the case, but there are cases where you've bought the property for $700,000 and the valuations come in at $600,000. Right? Now the bank's going to lend you the money based on the valuation, not the purchase price. Yeah. So if you're really pushing your limits and your budgets and you're using every single cent, that's something that needs to be discussed with you. And that's why that cooling off process is so important when you pay 0.25% deposit, right, of the purchase price. Should that occur, or should your pest and building inspection find out there's termites or whatever, you don't want to proceed, all you lose is that 0.25%, right? And this is mainly New South Wales, by the way, right? So different states got different rules as well, right? Queensland got different processes and so forth. So that's why it's important, not to assume things. So even if you're pre-approved, there's still a valuation risk. And some of those risks could be the property is located very close to a high power transmission line, those high voltage, things, transformer things, right? So some banks have policies that if your loan involves lender's mortgage insurance, the mortgage insurer does not accept a property within 50 meters of that line.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So some clients don't know that, and it wasn't discussed,
Yeah.
and it wasn't made. The client wasn't made aware, even though that their scenario
it's a
How are you
shock to
meant
find that
to? Yeah, how are you
Yeah.
meant to find out
Yeah.
about
It's a
this?
shock.
well,
No one got
Woo. All right.
Sorry.
This episode's gone
That'd be
way
an
too long.
absolute shock to find that out.
What okay. So
Sorry.
we now own
Sorry, Jay.
we now own.
Well, no,
No?
not yet. Well, usually, again, before, so you get your loan in place 1 or 2 days before, you should do a pre-settlement inspection. So you should go so when you purchase a property, it's in a particular condition. This is, again, New South Wales. Queensland's a bit different. You should go and do an inspection 1 or 2 days before to make sure that the property's still there.
Yeah.
Hasn't,
Oh my
Yeah.
hasn't burnt down.
The contract,
That could happen
the
as well.
contract might say they're leaving a shed at the back, and then you go and the shed's not there anymore.
Well,
You're like,
that's but
"Where
the
was
contract
shed?"
may also say they're going to take.
They're going to take the
They're
shed.
going to take this.
Yeah. Read the contracts.
Read the
Read the
contract.
contract.
So that'll say what's
Wow.
inclusions and exclusions to what you're buying. So it's important to get advice on that side of things.
Yeah, that's a really good point because once you settle, it's your problem.
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah. So if the hot water's not working and
Yeah.
you didn't realize when you do your pre-settlement inspection and it settles,
Yeah.
it's your problem.
If there was a
Right.
dishwasher
Nobody
in the
cares.
kitchen
Yeah.
and
No-
it's not
wow.
there and you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
make sure
buyer
you look at it.
beware,
Yeah.
right, is the principle they operate on. You know, it's your
Right.
responsibility to check it.
That's
There's no
messed up.
guarantees. You know, if like you guys talked about, if they said we're going to remove all this rubbish from the, from the shed,
Yep.
and it's not removed and you've settled, the seller's definitely not coming back to remove it.
Yeah.
100%.
It's your
That's
stuff now.
nasty.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Oh, but it's.
I feel like-
I think it's reasonable. Like at some
Really?
point, you got to take some responsibility.
Well,
Okay.
well,
If,
I
if
think-
you're saying it's
No, you
got
got to do an inspection. And
Yeah.
so to be
Yeah.
clear, if you do your inspection and it's not in the stuff left there or they've taken things out, you would tell your solicitor.
you tell them. Yeah.
And your solicitor
Okay.
would
Oh, right,
halt the
okay.
settlement. The settlement
Yeah.
wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what-
So
yeah.
you can delay.
You can delay
Correct.
settlement
Delay
until
settlement.
it's in a
Oh,
position
okay.
of... Yeah.
All right.
So you delay your
Yeah.
settlement.
But if you've done the check, you don't realize that the dishwasher's missing, then like that's kind of on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
I
mean?
mean, if you don't notice a huge hole in the kitchen...
Yeah. Hold on, this was a 5-bedder. It's now a 4-bedder. Where's the other bedroom gone?
They've taken a bedroom.
But then again, if
Why
they
is
say...
the tenant still here?
Yeah, but... It's a shock.
Who's this guy living? Who's this guy that's with me? Who's squatting in my house?
Oh, yeah. Purple
Sorry.
Pingus is there.
Okay.
Mate, this has been empty for 40 days. I'm fine. Yeah, so then settlement day comes. Settlement day comes.
So then you settle. Happiest day.
Then you settle.
happiest
But what
day.
happens on settlement day?
What happens?
So settlement day, you don't actually personally have to do anything. So your solicitor, the bank, so these are the parties involved,
Yep.
your solicitor, the bank that's giving you the money,
Yep.
right? The seller solicitor,
Yep.
right? And then there's the real estate agent.
Yep.
So on settlement day, it's really all coordinated by the solicitors.
Yeah. So the transaction happened.
It
They bring all
happens
they amalgamate all
electronically.
the money together.
Yeah, so the
from
seller
different parties.
solicitor will say and send a what's known as like a settlement statement
Yep.
to your solicitor saying that, or your conveyancer, that your client, who's the buyer, has paid 10% deposit. They got this amount to pay. We've calculated the council rates, the adjustments,
Yep.
the pro rata stuff.
Government
This is the
grants as
total.
well,
Yeah.
like-
Right. And then the bank gets that as well.
Yep.
Right. So the bank pays that directly as directed by a solicitor. So the bank doesn't actually give you the money.
No.
Right. To actually transfer. Right. So nobody gives you the money.
No.
The agent doesn't give you the money. The
Money
bank
doesn't actually
Yeah, you
exist
don't receive
in
any
reality.
money.
It's
Right.
all
It's all an illusion.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
So really, you just wait,
You didn't see
sit
the
back, and then you get confirmation from your conveyancer solicitor, hey, that
Hey, it's
settlement's
settled.
complete.
Go pick up the keys.
Yeah, so you go see the real estate agent, pick up the keys.
Then they're your
hopefully
friend.
they give you a bottle of champagne.
They give you champagne.
a nice
Yeah.
bouquet of flowers.
They send you a text
handbag.
message every year saying, "Hey, it's been a year. Do you want to
And
sell?"
day one, very, very important. The final thing, day one, get an insurance policy
Yeah.
for your property.
Oh, so that's
Home
a good
insurance.
point.
Home
So
and
yeah, so
contents.
often when you're
Home
buying a
and building and
house,
contents insurance.
most banks will require you to have a building insurance in place on the day of settlement.
Most banks will try and sell
Really?
you their own building insurance product.
Not many anymore.
do.
Yeah, because they realize they don't do
You
that
have
well.
to have
Okay.
this in place.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
some-
So so they need
You'd
proof
want
of
to have it in
that
place.
before
Right.
it's,
If it burns
it's ready
down.
for
Yeah,
settlement.
because if it settles and it burns down,
Yeah.
it's your responsibility. And if you don't have insurance, well, then you don't have insurance.
But if you're buying an
Nice.
apartment,
Yeah.
Strata has
Yeah.
insurance itself.
Oh, right.
Even-
okay.
you'd have to
even
take that.
like if
Oh,
there's
okay.
multiple
Townhouses.
townhouses, then
Yeah.
the strata would have the building insurance. You probably maybe want to
Correct.
still get contents.
Yeah.
Maybe if you.
That's
if you want,
right.
But
100%.
yeah, interesting.
So
Yeah.
you don't have contents insurance.
No, I don't. I'm not gonna. I didn't say that. I did not say
Where,
that.
where do you live again?
I don't have any. I don't actually own any contents. We our mortgage is so high. We just have a box that we sit on. We look where the TV should be.
What, you have a box?
And yes. So I do have contents insurance. So then you own it, right? So you either move in,
You own it.
all right, or you rent it out if it's an investment. Then you might want to speak to the real estate agent on your
yeah,
side.
yeah.
He or she's your best
Yeah.
mate.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Hey.
Remember me?
Yeah. So that's good. And then you move in. So that's
Well, the agent's probably trying to, if they know that you're an investor,
Yeah.
they'll be really close to you to try and get that
Yeah.
rental, to manage the rental.
Yeah.
Totally.
Pretty keen on that.
Is there an after? What happens after? Is that it?
Pop the champagne.
Pop the
have your
champagne.
first meal.
And the mortgage
Oh,
repayment.
and the
after-
mortgage.
If it's, if you're getting a loan to buy the property, not the cash buyers.
Yep.
After, it's really important, and we always remind our customers, check the details of their loan repayment.
Yeah.
Yeah, when is it going to come out? Which bank account? Because there's some statistics that show that a lot of customers get a call from the bank on the first repayment because they missed it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Because they've
exactly.
forgotten which bank account, forgot to move the money,
God.
the excitement.
That happened to me this week. I'm not even joking. It happened to me yesterday.
Yeah,
So
right.
I just refinanced recently.
Yeah.
Gave them, ticked off the wrong account as the one that the money's coming from. So it was like my everyday spending account, which literally has a couple $100 in it at any
Right.
time.
That's your coffee account.
So then I'm like, I looked at it yesterday morning, I'm like, why is my coffee account got $0? I didn't have that much. I may have
But aren't you
5
drinking
coffees
10 a day?
Yeah. But I don't buy 10 a day. I make a coffee,
Tina, did we spend
Like,
$10,000
Tina,
yesterday?
you know what?
Oh, yes, babe.
So I had to ring the bank. The
Yeah.
bank, and I was like, "Hey, sorry, wrong
Yeah.
account." They quickly changed it,
Yeah.
which was great. Told me about the 99 offset loan
Yep.
account.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so then you
opportunities.
just spend the next 30 years paying a mortgage.
Yeah.
That's the fun part.
You can do it quicker.
If you do weekly
Yeah,
repayments.
if you do weeklies.
Yeah.
Well, that's
say
another
5 years, 33
Okay,
weeks.
we're
But that's the process,
We're getting,
right?
into another, we're getting into another episode.
Speak to a mortgage broker.
Yeah, we're getting into another episode. But I think that's it. And look, given that's a lot. Like, look, I'm surprised. We actually had a lot of fun in what is probably like what we feel is like obvious stuff. But I learned some stuff today. I think we all have. Maybe.
Oh,
we
yeah,
all
for
learned some
sure.
Stuff today.
Yeah.
It's probably the last point is that's a lot of shit. Like that
It's
is a lot of stuff.
of
that
people
And a
happens.
lot of
involved and a
people
lot of
involved.
steps.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what makes it really difficult.
So maybe going
There
back
is a lot.
at the start of this, I kind of looked at You Wouldn't podcast. I looked at that guy. I go, is this guy for real? But maybe he is for real. If you're a young guy or girl, haven't purchased property before, your parents are saying you're a dickhead. They don't want to help you.
Yes. Like, where did the parents come in?
So this is the final point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might have some thoughts on this. Like, should parents, schools, like who needs to help these kids out with their education on this?
I don't know. I was thinking about this. It's like I think it definitely starts at home. Like there's conversations that you can start having very early on. It's about financial literacy, I think, in general. Like budgeting, spending, saving, like all of that comes into that conversation. And I think especially if you've bought, like things might have changed over time. So it might not be exactly the same process, but I do think as a parent, you have a duty to convey this information. But I think it also starts in school. So if you're renting, your parents are renting, then this conversation needs to start at school.
Yep.
I actually really agree with that in terms of it starts at home with the parents. Like I was a young kid, and I know it's frowned upon program now, but the Dolomites with CBA, that I think there was like
I think we're sponsored by CBA this episode.
But that was a great I know it's frowned upon with.
Dolomite was the best.
He was the best. But
Yeah.
I used to get the little yellow book and so basically it was like a balance book, and it was like because obviously no digital banking back then. But it was a book where you could put some money in it, and the school would take you to the bank, and you'd go bank it, and like that was a really good experience in primary school.
Did the school take you to the
Yes.
bank?
They used to take
They
us
used to
to
pick
the
it
bank.
up from us.
Oh, maybe it was
yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't think we went to the bank. Every
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Hey kids, let's
maybe
go
it
to
was
the
that.
bank.
This is a bank.
I would hate going to the bank the day all the kids are there. Oh my god. Anyway, sorry.
Like no, and then like that was a really good experience with money and how
Yeah.
to budget. Like that's I think really important, getting that part. So that's the school side of things. But then you'd go home and your parents would then get the book out and all right, how much have you got? And you'd write down the amount. That early budgeting. So it's not about buying property at that point. It's like budgeting, learning money,
yes.
like how to save and
Yeah.
what to save for. I think that's really
Very,
important.
very
It starts at home.
important. Yeah, I mean, I think it's different generations. Like, I would definitely talk to my daughter about it, but my parents didn't talk to me about it. And I can see with both my sister and myself, like, this has caused issues later down the line.
Like what?
Like, in terms of, like, being able to budget.
Yep. So you can't budget, your
Loans.
sister can?
No, but we both had issues. Like, we
Okay.
had to educate ourselves on this.
Yep.
Whereas I think if my parents had maybe taken a more proactive approach, they were just afraid that we would talk about it with other people, right? So it just kind of wasn't something that you talked about. But I think it's so important.
Yeah, so
to do that.
finances was private, I guess.
Yeah,
Because
yes.
my parents never spoke about their own. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know if there were I'm assuming they had tough times, right?
Yeah.
But they never spoke about that with us. But they did talk about, saving property and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Maybe not
my
to the
parents
degree,
never
not
did.
to the degree that I talk to my kids about it. And I think most of us are like this as well. It's hard with the savings, the Dolomite stuff, Chris, because like back in the day, man, you get your $5 pocket money. It was physical cash that existed. Like,
Yeah,
it was real.
So
true.
hard- it's so
That
hard
is.
You can't now. How do you
Some-
show a kid like and like my son? He's only 5 years old, but man, you give him $1 and he's spending that $1. He's buying 2 Super Dupers with that $1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buying his friend one.
He's buying his friend
That's
one.
right,
and him
because they
one.
think you've got unlimited amount of money on that card. Like
The
it's
card is
just-
dangerous.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
it
it's
is
very hard to take,
dangerous.
but I think you've got to start somewhere. And there's different
Yeah.
strategies you can use. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is much harder now.
Yeah.
Without having physical cash. It's very difficult.
That's another episode, saving
Yeah.
your kids.
Budgeting.
Yes.
But yeah, so what about schools?
Yeah, I think schools definitely have a role to play. I mean, it's, as I said, financial literacy. It's also about doing your taxes, like just basic stuff that a lot of people don't know when they go out and venture on their own, go to university. Like it's important.
There needs to be like a common sense subject.
Yes.
There should
Schools.
should
Whether
be a
it's in high
subject.
school
There
or-
should be science, maths, PE, life.
Yeah,
Life.
How
Yeah.
to change a tire, how to
Yeah.
do your
That's
taxes,
right. How to
buy a
cook, how to
property,
do your
change a
washing.
car.
Like, I mean, yeah, it sounds silly,
Like,
but I feel
It's
like
the basic stuff.
Yes.
Is it school's responsibility to teach you how to change a tire?
Why not?
There's
Yeah, why
rules
not?
about it.
Exactly.
You can just
Yeah.
learn on YouTube these days.
A school
Yeah,
of
true.
YouTube. I like that. Do
Mm.
your own research as well. Be accountable, people.
Oh, yeah,
Be
true.
accountable. It's not-
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I think it's good to start the conversations in school as well, because then you can continue at home,
I love it, guys. This was I had a bonus video just in case this was a boring chat, but it was so much fun. We've probably gone over time. Chris is making dad
Yes.
jokes already. So we're gonna say I'll save that video for next week's topic because it's a good one. You have to watch next week to find out what it is.
Are we doing something special? Are
Um,
we doing something special next week?
Are we? Oh, maybe. Look, let's
We can cut this out
Let's
if you
we can. No, let's not cut it out. This is real. This is a real show. But last week we had that Q&A episode with all the YouTube questions and comments. I want to recommend more people. No, it was last week because we're recording it this week. But when this comes out, it'll be last week. Come on, Chris, peek behind the curtain, guys. But if you
Confusing.
That was so dumb.
if you're watching, it has been a long episode. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, if you're on TikTok, wherever you find us, ask some questions. If you're on Spotify listening, you can ask us questions there as well. DM us, ask us questions, make comments, because I want to do more Q&As. Last week's
Yeah,
Q&A was a
that
lot
was
of
so
fun.
good.
I want to do more of those, and if we can get more and more of those, we'll do like a hotline and get people to call in. I think we'll try and do something.
Yeah,
like
we've
that
got a
in the
hotline.
future.
You can leave a voicemail.
Yeah.
So we're going to post a number in that
Yes.
shortly
Yeah.
in the chat.
Yeah.
Where you can call in and leave a message, and we'll play your
That's
voicemail.
fun.
And it'll be Jason. It'll be recorded, but it'll be Jason, the sexiest voice in property, being like, "Hey, you've reached property now." Like, can you do that? Can you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, we'll do like the B sharps.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Was it good? Was it hello? Goodbye.
Goodbye. It was both.
Goodbye.
That's how we should end the
Goodbye,
episode.
my
Let's end the
cordial
episode like that. Let's end the
baby.
episode like that. Can we start low?
Hello.
No, goodbye. Normally, hello is at the start. Sorry, back. Okay, take 2 and action.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you next week, guys. It's been Property Now.
The Property Now podcast offers opinions on Australian property news for informational and entertainment purposes only, and they are general in nature. It does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. It does not constitute professional advice. Always seek expert guidance before making any property-related decisions.